And so what went from a 0 to 1, is it going to be Bitcoin, is it not, is now going to be a crypto industry. And the reason why that becomes interesting is because people who have this portfolio model or portfolio approach.
Anthony Pompliano, CEO of Professional Capital Management and a significant figure in the cryptocurrency business, recently spoke with CNBC. Anthony Pompliano discussed the SEC's approval of Ethereum ETFs, the implications for the industry, a Bitcoin ETF update, and the political impact on pricing. Anthony Pompliano highlights the Ethereum ETF's historic launch and massive inflows. Over $100 million in net flows occurred in a single day. He compares Bitcoin to the QQQ ETF to highlight the widespread interest in the cryptocurrency. Pompliano questions if the second ETF will have the same impact, citing a drop in enthusiasm and media engagement. Pompliano argues that Ethereum's narrative is more chaotic because to its technology platform and increasing competition. He discusses the Ethereum ETF and how investors can diversify their holdings by dividing them between Ethereum and Bitcoin. He does not expect the flows will be as substantial as those for Bitcoin, citing the fact that ETF holders will not have access to staking or cash flow. Pompliano examines Bitcoin flows and notes that a significant amount of money is entering these funds. He believes that the adoption of the Ethereum ETF signals that Wall Street will recognize altcoins, which will boost the crypto sector. Pompliano emphasizes the portfolio method, in which participants employ all cryptocurrencies to implement their ideas. Pompliano discusses Ethereum's monetary policy, pointing out that it is decided.
Well, let's go look at the Bitcoin ETF. I think, historic thing, probably the best ETF launch in history. One of the interesting stats is that the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF has had more net flows than QQQ year to date. Right, so just massive flows there, over $500 million just yesterday alone. And so I think what a lot of people say is, well, that was the first one. Is the second one going to be as big? And I don't think that's true, right? If you just go and, before I came on, I looked at all the major news sites. People aren't talking about it as much. And so the media attention, the hype, all that stuff isn't really there. And so it brings you to the question of why are people not talking about it as much? And I think part of the challenge for Ethereum is that the story isn't as clear. It's very clear with Bitcoin, right? It's digital gold. When we start talking about Ethereum, you start talking about a technology platform. There's a lot more competition, et cetera. But if you go and you talk to the people at Bitwise, they're launching ETH today. Yep. What they would tell you is, well, actually, there's diversification. People on Wall Street love that. And so maybe actually the benefit that Ethereum will have is just people say, well, I don't want to have just one. I want to have a couple of them. It's Bitcoin, it's Ethereum. Let me do like a 70-30 split, and that'll be good enough for it. And so I think that we really got to see what these flows are going to look like because the story isn't as clear. You're not going to get access to the staking. So the cash flow that people really like about Ethereum isn't available to these kind of ETF holders. And I think that the flows itself are not going to be nearly as big as Bitcoin. And so the question is, how much impact on prices is this really going to have?
Walk us through just what the flows look like on Bitcoin to the extent that that's going to be a model at all. Even if you said this 70-30 idea that you're going to diversify in that way, you'd say, well, then should you just say that, this is going to be 30% of whatever that was?
Yeah. Well, I think that the flows on the Bitcoin side, some of these funds have 10, 15, $19 billion in them, right? I mean, these are real money that's moving into these things. What I do think is interesting about the Ethereum ETF approval, and probably the thing I've taken away the most, is less about Ethereum and more about the rest of the market. What this signals to me is that all of the altcoins are going to come to Wall Street. It may take a while. There may need to be some regulatory clarity. They may get treated a certain way, but these things are going to come to Wall Street. And so what went from a 0 to 1, is it going to be Bitcoin, is it not, is now going to be a crypto industry. And the reason why that becomes interesting is because people who have this portfolio model or portfolio approach are going to start to apply that to all of crypto. One of the issues that I think the critics have with Ethereum is that the monetary policy mimics much closer to kind of the US dollar, right? There are these periodic decisions as to whether the monetary policy is going to be more constrictive or not, how many are going to be available, et cetera. So again, the story isn't as clear. It's not as certain. What I do think is also interesting is that Ethereum long has said, hey, we're the smart contract platform, and they were the dominant one there. But now there's a lot of competition, right? It's not the fastest, it's not the cheapest. There's these other blockchains that have come forward. And so I actually am of the belief that there will be inflows to the Ethereum ETFs. The Ether price will go up, but it's just not going to be to the magnitude that people kind of are hoping for because of these other.
Anthony Pompliano discusses the massive inflows and historic debut of the Bitcoin ETF. He questions the viability of the Ethereum ETF due of its murkier storyline and rivalry. In contrast to Bitcoin's significant inflows and clear digital gold story, Pompliano believes altcoins will reach Wall Street and extend the cryptocurrency sector. However, Ethereum's inflows will be capped. Anthony Pompliano discusses his investment decisions, disclosing that he sold all of his Ethereum last year and purchased Solana, which has outperformed. He explains that Solana has momentum, a lower market capitalization, and is cheaper and faster than Ethereum. Pompliano observes that the decentralized exchange volume on Solana is expanding, reducing Ethereum's market share. He believes Solana has a lot of momentum and will outperform. When discussing Bitcoin's recent price changes, Pompliano emphasizes that it is susceptible to volatility and geopolitical events. He points out that Bitcoin plummeted shortly after word emerged that President Trump had been the subject of an assassination attempt. However, it quickly surged again after it was determined that Trump was fine. Similarly, Bitcoin reacted to President Biden's statement that he would not seek for politics again. According to Pompliano, Bitcoin is blurring the barriers between traditional finance and cryptocurrency, and it is now a part of the larger financial business. Pompliano observes that when news breaks, markets suffer anxiety before rushing to react.
I'm highly biased. I sold all of the Ethereum that I owned last year. I bought Solana. It's outperformed. And so
you're now a Solana maximalist.
No. It's the second biggest position. And really the thought process is the Bitcoin position that we own, we're going to continue to hold. But there is an entire other universe there. And so the thought process being you want to be in the asset that is cheaper, faster, and likely going to receive more flows. And if you go and you look at DEX volume, right, decentralized exchanges on Solana is actually eating into the market share of on Ethereum. And so we just think there's a lot more momentum. It's a smaller market cap asset and likely to outperform.
Let's flip the screen around and show everybody Bitcoin, just where things stand right now. Curious, we sort of went up the mountain. We went down the mountain. We're climbing the mountain again a little bit. In terms of, if this is price discovery, what do you think is really happening?
First of all, we've been doing a lot of mountain climbing over the years, so I don't think there's anything new. What I do think is happening, though, if you watch over just the last 2 weeks of Bitcoin has been very sensitive to a lot of these geopolitical or kind of uncertain moments, right? If you go back and you look at President Trump's assassination attempt, Bitcoin on the news dropped immediately as soon as it was breaking that he was actually okay. Bitcoin ripped higher. If you go and you look last week or last weekend and you see Joe Biden going ahead and coming out and saying he's going to drop out of the race, Bitcoin again, as soon as there was news, drops, comes right back as soon as there's some certainty, he goes ahead and he endorses Harris. And so I think that these assets really are starting to kind of blend the line. It used to be the crypto industry and traditional finance. Now what you're starting to get is just an overall financial market.
I don't know what you're saying there exactly.
What do you mean?
So you're saying he's out and there was a hope that maybe it would be someone more electable than Kamala Harris, and then when you find out it's Kamala Harris, it goes back up?
It's all about certainty, right? So like when there's an assassination attempt, what ends up happening is the news breaks, hey, the potential president got shot. And so all of a sudden people are freaking out, prices drop. As soon as he's okay, price comes back. If you go and you look again at the announcement, hey, the current president is not going to seek re-election. There's uncertainty. What's going to happen? What's interesting to me is just think of it as human nature, right? When you hear a piece of news, right? So I was sitting, eating. Somebody said to me, hey, President Trump was just shot, right? Literally got a text message. I jump on Twitter, and you have this feeling, almost this like human nature takes over. You're like, oh my God, what happened? And then as soon as you realize, okay, I see the video, I see the news, et cetera, you kind of, okay, it looks like he's all right, et cetera. I think that markets react the same way. And what's really interesting is both of those situations happened on the weekend. Yeah. Stock market is closed. This is open.
Right. But Andrew's right. You would think it would be a flight to safety, and it's not.
Well, ultimately it was. But I think that the initial reaction to a news like that is fear. And then you do the flight to safety. And so all that happened, by the way, in 15 minutes, right? But what we're talking about is kind of that initial shock of the news. And some of it may be algorithmic trading as well. Just, hey, negative trading, news, prices drop. Right. But I think that in both of those situations, Bitcoin was up 3% on Sunday after President Biden dropped out. And so I think that that asset specifically is starting to insert itself and becoming a signal for what is happening in the world.
But how much of that is just the regulatory overhang and thinking, okay, if you get somebody at the SEC who is not so opposed to Bitcoin, you'd have an easier way of doing things?
I think Bitcoin's through the threshold on the regulatory front. What I do think applies is all these other assets. I mean, the ETH ETF, to the point of if these altcoins are going to come to the market, I think that people will start to allocate to them. The question is just which assets are going to be first, and then when are they actually going to get approved?
With net inflows of $106.6 million, the newly launched spot Ether ETFs had an extraordinary first day of trading. This is amazing given the $485 million in major withdrawals from Grayscale's Ethereum Trust. The Bitwise Ethereum ETF, with $204 million in inflows, followed BlackRock's iShares Ethereum Trust ETF, which led the group with a strong $266.5 million. A significant $71.3 million was added to the Fidelity Ethereum Fund ETF. Other ETFs had significant inflows, including the Core Ethereum ETF from 21 Shares, the Ethereum Mini Trust from Grayscale, and Franklin Ethereum ETF from Franklin Templeton. Grayscale's Ethereum Mini Trust, in particular, generated $15.2 million in new inflows, making the spin-off product off to a strong start. Franklin Templeton's Franklin Ethereum ETF attracted $13.2 million, while the Core Ethereum ETF with 21 shares earned $7.4 million in inflows. Spot Ethereum ETFs experienced $1.08 billion in total trading activity on their first day of trading, which was 23% more than that of Bitcoin ETF.